My name is Elias Vance, and my family's story is etched into the high desert of Arizona. Since 1920, we've owned the High Ledge Ranch, a stretch of land that feels like the edge of the world. Our eastern border is a natural wonder, the Shadow Rift, a canyon that plunges for 100 feet into the earth. The views from the rimrock on my property, well, there's nothing else like it. For years, I ran my cattle, kept to myself, and enjoyed a quiet life. But that peace shattered when a powerful non-profit called the Ethered Conservation Trust, or ACT, moved in. Funded by Silicon Valley money, the ACT bought the massive tract of land right next to mine. Their grand plan was to build a world-class public wilderness trail. The problem was, the most beautiful, most direct, and most logical path for their trail system ran right across a half-mile stretch of my private property. This wasn't just any piece of land. It was the one spot that connected their entire network. Without it, their grand trail was just to dead ends. The ACT didn't waste any time. I got a letter from their CEO, a doctor, Quentin Thorne. He used a lot of fancy words like shared stewardship and preserving the American West. Then came the offer, $1.2 million for a scenic and recreational easement, which meant letting the public walk all over my land whenever they pleased. I said no. That rim wasn't just a pretty view for me. It is the only practical route I have to move my cattle between pastures in the spring and fall. The alternative is a dangerous trek down into the canyon and back up. Doctor Thorne did not like the word no. He immediately went on the offensive. First came the charm campaign. He funded a local movement called Open the Rift, plastering the town with glossy photos of happy hikers and kids. The message was clear. I was just some selfish old man hoarding nature from the public. When that didn't work, he brought out the lawyers. The ACT filed a bizarre lawsuit against me for inverse condemnation. They argued that because my land was so critical to their public trail, my refusal to sell was basically blocking a public safety corridor. It was a twisted legal maneuver designed to bully me into selling. But Thorne didn't just fight me in court. He decided to bring the fight right to my fence line. While the lawsuit dragged on, huge wooden signs started appearing on the ACT's property, pointing hikers directly toward my land. One sign read, Canyon View Loop, 1/2 mile ahead. It was a deliberate lie, designed to lead people straight onto my private trail. Then came the trail ambassadors. These were young, athletic hikers, usually in groups, who would hop my fence and accidentally wander onto my property. I'd ride out on my horse, trying to be polite but firm, and lead them back to the ACT's land. It was a constant headache. But one afternoon, they took it to a whole new level. I found a young woman sitting on the ground just inside my property, clutching her ankle. She had this look of practiced pain on her face. I need help, she whimpered. I fell on your trail. I knew right away it was a setup. This was the liability trap they were trying to spring. They wanted me to get so scared of being sued that I'd have no choice but to sell. But I was ready for them. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Ma'am, I said calmly, this is private property. It's clearly fenced. You are trespassing. I am calling the local ranger to come and assist you. The change was instant. She stood up, her ankle suddenly perfectly fine. The look of distress vanished, replaced by anger. You can't record me, she yelled. I'll sue you for assault. I just pointed my camera at the private property signs she just walked past. Now, I said, I'm recording a criminal trespass in progress. You have 5 seconds to get back on the ACT side of that fence before I press charges for trespassing and filing a false report. She didn't hesitate. She scrambled back over the barbed wire fence, her hiking buddies watching from a distance. As soon as I got back to the house, I sent that unedited, time-stamped video straight to my lawyer. My lawyer, Maria de la Cruz, was a force of nature herself. She specialized in Western land and water rights, and she knew exactly what to do. She told me to put up a stronger fence and install cameras, which I did immediately. But her real genius move came from digging through old county archives. She unearthed a dusty, handwritten document from 1935. It was called the Ditch Riders Agreement. This old agreement was between my great-grandfather and the Federal Bureau of Land Management, or BLM. See, back then, the BLM owned the land that the Act now holds. The agreement was simple. Because my ranch was trapped by the canyon, the BLM granted my family an exclusive and temporary easement to move our cattle across a section of their land. In return, my family had to keep our side of the canyon rim completely private, with no public access to prevent our cattle from falling into the rift. This was our silver bullet. Maria argued that if the Act forced me to open my rim trail to the public, they would be violating the terms of that original safety agreement. This would invalidate my family's right to use the cattle driving route on their land, effectively destroying my ability to run my ranch. The Act's public trail wouldn't just be an inconvenience. It would be an act of economic destruction. The case went before a judge. On one side, you had the Act's claim of public good for their recreational trail. On the other, you had my documented, century-old right to operate my ranch, based on a historic safety agreement. The judge sided with history, with common sense, and with me. The court denied the Act's demand for a public easement. The ruling was clear, forcing public access onto my land would illegally destroy my ranch's ability to operate. The judge ordered the Act to remove all their misleading signs immediately and, best of all, to pay every penny of my legal fees. The court also issued a permanent injunction, legally barring the Act from ever trying to take my land through eminent domain, or any other legal trickery again. Drive. Thorne was furious. He filed an appeal, but by then the story was out. The local news ran stories about how this billionaire-funded conservation trust had tried to bankrupt a family ranch that had been here for 100 years. The bad press was a disaster for them. Major donors started pulling their funding. A month later, the Act quietly dropped the appeal. Today, the rim is still mine. It's quiet again. The Act's trail now ends abruptly at a well-marked, double-walled fence on my property line. They had to spend a fortune building a long, ugly series of switchbacks down into the canyon and back up again, just to get around my half-mile strip of land. It added 3 grueling miles to their trail. Twice a year, I still drive my cattle along that rim. Sometimes, I look down and see the hikers sweating and struggling on their long detour far below. And I have to say, the peace up here is absolute. Thanks for listening to my story. If you believe in protecting private property rights and standing up to bullies, please like this video and subscribe to see more stories of folks fighting back.